All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Wombo Combo Podcast. I'm BreakyCPK, joined by BSJ as always. And yeah, it's good to be back. Obviously, a tsunami stepping in for my shoes last week. The big shout out to him for doing so. It sounds like I had a lot of fun having some good discussion there, a little bit different discussion, which is great to listen to. So, but happy to be back. Definitely more Dota 2 to talk about, and excited to get going with. But BSJ, first things first, how you doing, man?
I'm okay, feeling a little under the weather, but all good here. Still able to function as a human being, so that works out. But a lot of fresh stuff this week. Obviously, not much with tournament-wise, but a lot of things that affect the casual player. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
Yeah, that's, of course, you're getting into the whole regional league announcement that'll be taking place next season officially for the DPC. So we certainly plan to talk about that, as well as even previewing the minor. That's, of course, going to be coming up. In fact, I believe it starts on Thursday of this week. So those 8 teams going to be competing, of course, for the ultimate one spot to then qualify for the major. That is ESL LA. So we'll be doing that as well. But, before we start to get into that discussion, I figure kind of just a side topic thing almost, but so it sounds like you're under the weather there. That's sorry to hear. Hopefully doing better. I personally am coming from traveling to a couple of events myself. I was actually at DreamHack the week before. Then I went to PAX East just this last weekend as well. So I've been doing a bit of traveling there, and thankfully, I feel good. Going to those conventions and events, you never really know how you're going to feel after them. But I will say a lot of cleaning, a lot of hand cleaning, a lot of hand sanitizer and stuff. Of course, what's going on recently with the coronavirus.
Of course.
But that also leads into, it kind of ties in here a little bit, because just this last weekend, in fact, ESL Katowice was announced that the people that were supposed to be there watching the crowd for their CSGO, a big major that was taking place, it was just announced that unfortunately the country actually made the announcement, it was the mayor of the city or whatever, but either way, that they did not want masses, they did not want a lot of people together within a stadium like that. So the event still went on, however the crowd was no longer able to attend. It's kind of moments like that happen, and you kind of just realize that, life sometimes does get in the way, and it's unfortunate, but obviously it is a very serious issue going on right now. We don't even know necessarily the whole extent of it just yet. We're still learning new stuff every day, but the point is, we'll see how things continue to develop. And of course, what I'm really specifically getting at is ESL LA. That is later on this month. The major, about 3 weeks from now is when it's set to happen. I'm going to attend it. That's the plan, at least. I know I believe you're talent for it, right?
Yeah, I'll be paneling a bit and casting a bit for that event.
So I guess where this all is leading, it's interesting to know, we don't know. I mean, you hope that everything's going to happen and everything will be fine in the end, but you really don't know, right? So I'm actually kind of curious, BSJU, and how what is your interpretation of everything that's going on, and are you worried at all, or are you just kind of going with the flow kind of guy?
I am just a go with the flow kind of guy. We all get weirdly anxious about different things, I think. And for me, whatever reason, if I just have absolutely no control over whether or not it can be different, I just don't worry about it. So I'm prepared to deal with it either way it goes. But for me, I'm under the impression no matter what, I'll be at the event. It just means that, they might have to do the canceling of spectators. That would be really tragic simply because we haven't had a North American LAN, and I do have a bunch of friends, including even my roommate, that will be going out to the event, and it'd be just a fun time to catch up with all the people around the country that play Dota. But other than that aspect, whatever needs to be done needs to be done. So if it happens, it happens. Things will work out, but I'm more so even concerned about like Chinese teams getting visas or anything like that. Like I'm more concerned to make sure the players get there, and that's in and of itself is a discussion. But when it comes down to traveling and stuff, I just want to say that it is exhausting.
Yes,
I've had even last week, Complexity flew me. I'm partnered and sponsored by them. They flew me out for a day just to go shoot like a little YouTube series that they're doing. And I'm like,
Cool.
I'll do it. Like, I love working with you guys or whatever. And I just realized traveling is exhausting. So at least I'm only for LA, it's, right there
Yeah.
rather than being anywhere else. But I know you can relate from the caster talent life that sometimes it just takes a toll. And I believe I'm just exhausted is why I got sick. I
Sure.
think that's why. So it's a good problem to have, though, keeping busy and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Traveling is part of it. We've had that discussion before. You guys obviously even talked about it last week's show as well. I mean, it is part of the gig, but, it's good to have a problem like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I am with you, though, the idea, like I said, I just traveled to 2 different events from the West Coast to the East Coast. And the idea, I understand why there's the worry, of course, but it really just goes back to, man, just wash your hands, be sanitary. Yeah. That's like the biggest thing. And
be smart. Yeah.
Be smart about it. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind. So, personally, I'm not worried about going to the event, but you do bring up a very good point that actually the visa issues, and especially, of course, coming from China, and how this could delay things as far as the entry to the country. I don't know. I heard recently that there even was a China to USA as far as people coming over from China getting to the USA. There was some kind of ban recently because of the virus. So I don't know the official status on that as a follow-up, but I know there's like that whole 14-day quarantine, something along those lines. So yeah, it is a really, really interesting point to bring up. And I'm sure we'll hear more development as we get closer, because like I said, the event is the March 20th is when it's set to start, and that's for the playoff stage. So the event itself is even starting earlier on that week. So we really have, I mean, within the next week, we're probably going to learn something, I'm sure, when it comes to what's going to happen. But you hope that everything works out in the end, but I don't know. The way things are going, a whole cancellation of people attending a big major like the CSGO event, GDC, Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, getting flat out canceled, a really big event in the computer gaming world / just a development world. So I guess you just don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's about all I got for that one. I'm ready to talk about more exciting things, right? Even though it does need to be talked about. I'm not just like trying to shut it down, but let's we don't have to be all doom and gloom here. We can talk about some exciting stuff that people, maybe help them forget about their problems for a bit. So I don't want to, I'm usually not the segue guy, but I think everyone does want to hear both of our opinions on the regional leagues coming out next year, because it has been like a hot topic. People such as Heen, as well as other tier 1 coaches or professional players or staff have expressed their concerns, and I think it's a huge change. So whether or not it's good or bad, I think it also is in the eye of the beholder. Some people really appreciate it. Some people, tier 1 teams, may not. What are your initial thoughts on that?
My initial thoughts, so seeing the actual blog post and the idea of this whole regional leagues, my initial thoughts is this is great, right? Like, this is a conversation that you and I have had ourselves on many of these episodes. We've been having for years in general amongst the scene. The development of so 2 kind of things I feel like got answered to an extent, at least from at first glance. The development of the amateur scene. There's a lot more opportunity now for the lesser teams, a tier 2, tier 3, whatever you want to call them, to actually have a chance to compete against the best of the best on a somewhat more consistent basis and really give themselves a much better shot, we'll say, than in the past DBC seasons. But also just more of a kind of a flow, I think, is important too. Just the flow of this idea. It lasts over a 6-week period, I believe. And for those 6-week period, you're playing a couple of series, 2 to 3 series even throughout the week against one of the other teams within your division. You play ultimately every other team in your division. So I kind of like the flow idea of how it kind of keeps moving along. So both as a player, knowing that you have that 1 to 2 matches a week, and as a spectator, there's matches every day. But between the lower and upper divisions of all these different regions, it's going to be a lot of content to absorb. So I think those 2 factors were definitely kind of answered here with the introduction of the regional league. So in that aspect, I think it was my reaction was actually pretty positive. I like seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for someone on my bracket, tier 3 players ish that have struggled ever making money in competitive. This is fantastic, especially in NA. Easy $22,000 for top 8 teams. Not to bash on NA as we always do, but certain regions may have a tougher time being in the top 8 than in North America. The main concerns that I heard is just like that the point distribution is equal across all the boards for all the regions. So like being 5th place in NA is just as many points as being 5th place in Europe for the DPC. On top of that, some of my main concerns were the fact that if you don't make top, I believe 8 at the major, top 8 at the major, you are gaining no money or DPC points on top of what you made for being in the league. Some may say that you benefit from that in the sense that you made money going there in the first place. But what if you were like a tier 2 team last year that you make your $24,000 for qualifying, and then you go to this event and you just spent like a week or two at the event and you made $0. As someone who does this for a living, that could be a big concern for me. I think it's also just, I don't want to say it's like a slap in the face. Some people say, hey, you get to play against good teams, whatever. It's like you just spent a week at an event, you traveled somewhere possibly across the world, and you made $0. Something about that seems really funky to me. I also want to note that the majors are, I believe, the same prize pool as they were this year, and there's only 3 of them instead of 5. So effectively, they have taken a decent chunk of money out of the major itself, or just like the season itself, and they've redistributed it, but this also hurts the tier 1 teams. So I'm not going to lie. I think the biggest problem with this entire thing is if they have this consistent league, which I think you mentioned is a good thing, which I agree with, meaning, it's not just a heavy dose of Dota at once and then you never see competitive again for another 2 months. I think there's some benefit, like some beauty to that, but at the same time, I think it's like, I personally don't want to invest 40 hours in 3 days trying to watch Dota, or whatever. I'd rather kind of just sporadically tune in. That's my personality. But also, if you're going to do this consistent stream or consistent season, for the love of God, put a damn battle pass in there, please. Not only for people to have motivation to watch or like interest in watching, they can do all the where you bet battle pass points on the winner, all that kind of stuff. But also because you're taking money out of the scene, like you are. And the fact is, you will just inject money. And like, I think a lot of the concerns people have could be addressed by simply making the crowd more interested by giving you a battle pass and making the teams get more money. Like everyone's a winner there. So I hate to say it, but my make or break is if they add a battle pass, I think this entire structure will flow beautifully. I think if they don't, there's going to be a lot of people that are upset with the lack of money, and a lot of people will kind of just lose interest in these games because at the end of the day, they do need to be invested somehow. And if they're watching the 9th best team in North America with nothing that other than just watching them, I don't think a lot of people will do that, will actually watch or be interested. So that is my... that makes or break. That's all I can say. If they don't do a battle pass, I will be very upset.
Sure. Okay. So a couple of rebuttals, I guess, after that is, so on the battle pass aspect, look, I think in a perfect world, having a battle pass for every major and every kind of cycle, 6-week cycle, whatever of this would into the major would be great, right? But I feel like there's a reason why Valve hasn't been just doing battle passes every major, And there's one aspect of it is that it's work. It's not like they snap their fingers and all of a sudden they got a battle pass with all this product in it and it's good to go, right? There's actually work behind the scenes that is required to create set ideas, whether it's the cosmetics or just the fun games that are included. And there's more of the lesser things that would be worked on. You'd figure like the whole betting system that you could just rehash, sure. But there is still work involved. Now, I'm not making an excuse for Valve on that end, but it is something that is involved on their end as well. There is also the argument, I guess you could make, of if we're constantly having a battle pass throughout the season for all these majors and all these, these cycles, whatever we want to call them, then it may overdo it. So people may just get burnt out with it to an extent, and it, maybe over time they feel like Valve's perspective is we don't want to burn people out with just all these battle passes and the oversaturation of this content coming in. I guess I don't know how I feel about that personally. I could see that, especially being somebody that's worked behind the scenes, not on Dota by any means, but in another game, and Heroes of Neverth, of course. I could see that as being a business decision, not wanting to oversaturate with just constantly doing this whole battle pass idea to help fund and to help get the interest in. But yeah, in a perfect world, I think having the battle pass support would be nice. And hey, we don't know. I mean, this isn't, unless I miss something somewhere. They could do battle passes. This isn't like this is 100% everything that's going to happen next season and nothing else is going to be added. You figure they may have suggested that if they were, but I guess it is still potentially possible to happen if that's the case. But so as far as that goes, that would be my kind of looking from Valve's perspective as to why maybe they may not do it in the end.
My brief rebuttal on that is that they made a battle pass that's actually really good and in depth for Underlords, which has like 10% of the player base or less of Dota. So if they can take time out of their day to do that, what? Like, come on. Don't be stupid.
Yeah, but okay. Different.
Also, every game, Fortnite, like all these popular games, they have something fresh that makes people want to be motivated to play the game because they're rewarded in some way. And I think Dota really does lack that. I think the reward factor of Dota is probably one of its few shortcomings. And I think that, I can't accept any other excuse than if they were to talk about it publicly, the only thing I would accept is we are lazy, so we are not going to do it. Like, that is the only reason. Like, you can't tell me people won't spend money on TI battle passes. Somebody in chat said that. Please refer to the 2 or 3 years that they had majors and there was a battle pass for all of those, and look at the TI prize pool. Please refer to said evidence that people will not do that. I personally just think, Dota's just such a niche and beautiful community. And I said this was going to be short, but this truly is something where I'm not discrediting what you're saying, because there is a lot of it's not easy thing to do, but I will always I will always be steadfast in the fact that Dota is an amazing game, that the community is one of a kind, the type of loyalty you have to this game, that please, it's Valve's baby. Please take care of it. Please, for the love of God, just do what needs to be done to keep this game alive, because all the people that play it want it to be, whether or not they've turned into a spectator or not. Mm-hmm. And I will accept no excuse other than we are lazy that this does not happen. Something like this. I think that this seasonal thing is a huge step in the right direction in terms of motivating a tier 3 scene for the future. I think it's something we won't see the effects of being beneficial until 3 or 4 years from now at the very least, which also makes me kind of upset that it didn't happen earlier, because we'd already be feeling the effects of it now, where maybe more people were able to take time away from jobs in order to try to commit to Dota, because even though it's not a full salary, you are making 20 grand a year rather than 0, but that's my major thing. Is this season's thing tells me that they're trying to make Dota have some longevity to it, and what I'm telling that I think they need to do is all about promoting that longevity from the viewer perspective, because as long as there's people watching the game, it will always be a game. And that is something where that matters to me a lot, not only because I make a living doing this, but also I just love Dota. So, and I know tons of people watching, as well as just people who play, just love Dota. And it's something obviously I'm passionate about, but I'm not trying to, you gave all the reasons that they wouldn't. And I think you're giving a pretty accurate perspective from theirs, if they weren't to do it, why they wouldn't. But I would hear all of those explanations and have them be spewed out in the words of, we are lazy, and we don't want to do it. So
Fair.
that is
fair.
that's how I would hear it. I would listen, and that's how I would hear it. Rant or whatever you want to call it. Over.
Yeah. No, I do see where you're coming from, definitely, and I tend to actually agree with you. It's just playing more the devil's advocate there as far as what Valve's probably thinking, but you're right. I mean, obviously, as a spectator and a consumer in that sense, I would appreciate as much as possible to be entertained and drawn in, certainly when it comes to the scene. So, kind of moving on though, as far as but sticking with the regional league, the idea of I do like the idea that we have both this upper division and the lower division, and a lot of the matches in that. It gives it more of like this regular season feel, and I think again we've kind of talked about this before too, where leading into majors and stuff, it's unfortunate because the qualifiers happen a while in the past, and then leading into it's just the flow of them sometimes just really aren't the best. And I feel like having this season where especially every team plays another throughout, it'll create a better storyline in a sense going into the actual major. It'll treat it as more of an actual playoff, really. I mean, hell, the divisions, they go to a point where it basically turns into the playoffs for the major anyways, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it goes back to, I believe this is perhaps what Valve was definitely going for and trying to accomplish here, and kind of, looking at traditional sports too, where it's this whole regular season that leads into then the playoff aspect of said big event. I like that. I like that idea. So I am excited for that. The whole saturation of a lot of matches, yes, it might be too many to an extent, but I also think we have to wait and see how the whole studio broadcasts work, right? Like, how is that going to be sorted out? How's that going to be, or which studios are going to cover which, and how are the studios really going to step in now and given this opportunity to what are they going to do with all of this content and all this coverage and make it entertaining for the viewers to watch and appreciate as well. So that, I guess, the creativity aspect that Valve's almost giving BTS, RU Hub, like all of these studios out there to have fun with, I think is actually a really cool idea. And, you'd hope that they would step up to that challenge now and make sure that they make the best of it. And dare I say, create their, I don't know what the restrictions would be, but create their own sort of battle pass within the studios that people could support via the studios themselves by making purchases on whatever in-game cosmetics. I don't know. I guess that's maybe a little bit extreme, but stuff like that could be fun to see.
Yeah, definitely will promote, like what company wants to do the most high production. People will watch the qualifiers. Even people like my roommate who loves to cast Dota on the side. He's talked about potentially just being full-time, trying to cast the league and making that his channel a regular place for people to watch. I do think this not only promotes the players for tier 3, but also maybe the tier 2, tier 3 casting scene. It definitely gives people a lot more chances to be very regular in it rather than just being sporadically, whether or not they get invited to an event, deciding if they can do the job, that's something that I like as well. But when it comes down to everything about these leagues, the main issue I heard that was also brought up is that if you are 7th or 8th place, you get dropped down to the lower division. And then this is more important to me in regions like EU that are highly competitive, where 7th and 8th could not be very large of a skill difference between 6th. And you are then put to the lower division, and then to get back to the upper division, you have to make top 2 of the lower division, which is fine. But what the problem is you can't make it to the major if you are in the lower division. So in the first, say there's 3 majors, and in the first cycle you get 7th in your group, you're dropped down to the lower division, and you can't even make the second major. So suddenly teams that could be very high quality not only miss the first major, but they have no chance of making the second one.
It means you need to have a really good start to the season.
I mean, it just seems really punishing and really harsh. I don't even want to say harsh as in just step it up and get it done. But I think you should have like a qualifier to the upper division rather than just saying one, like have the 2 teams in the lower division. Oh, you could even have it where the bottom 4 of the upper division and the top 4 of the lower division have like a bracket, where they all play like a single elimination.
Relegation matches, basically.
Yeah, like something like that. Rather than just straight up saying the 8th place team in the upper division is worse than the 2nd place team in the lower division. I just think that that's very punishing in a way that's not constructive for teams to grow. I feel like that'll just cause a lot of disbands and shit that shouldn't happen because of that. A lot of the top teams have even said, like, that's pretty brutal. Like, what if, they're obviously trying to stop people from changing teams, and we're obviously trying to make it so people don't skip majors that, because of that punishing system. But at the same time, there has to be a fine balance. So I can only hope that Valve kind of listens to everything that people are saying as well as what we're talking about, and maybe releases a slight tweak before the upcoming season. I hope this isn't their absolute final draft, foot in the sand or draw the line in the sand. It's done, that kind of thing. I hope they don't do that. So that's my kind of last thought on the regional.
That is it, because even just take an example, obviously it's a different format and everything, but to give that the European major qualifiers for this last major qualifier, the 7th and 8th teams were Alliance and OG Seed. So yeah, Alliance would have then had to play a whole nother. I'm totally with you with the whole relegation match. I didn't even notice that until you brought that up. But yeah, looking at that now, that part of it, I don't know why you wouldn't do a relegation match. It's done in many other esport titles, let alone traditional sports even, when it comes to league play. So that does seem very harsh, certainly. But it is funny to think, though. But again, we don't know what new season's going to be like either, and obviously teams are going to take this into consideration when choosing their regions. Especially, it's going to make it that much more important at the beginning of the season. But you'd figure Europe is going to be the one that could potentially be most impacted by this, certainly. So, yeah, and then the one last point about some of the teams not being the happiest when it comes to the prize pool distribution and everything, and not as much money to go around throughout the majors, especially at the higher end. Like, obviously, I get where they're coming from, but I frankly, if it means sacrificing that for the sake of helping to develop and helping to fund the lesser teams like this format does, I'm all for it. And I go back to as well, you have TI at the end of the day. Like TI, and this whole format makes TI that much of a bigger deal, right? When it comes to obviously the money, especially. So, because TI is always the biggest deal every year. But when you have $5 million tournaments and $300,000 tournaments guaranteed throughout the season, and we've had even more in the past seasons, obviously, it does take away a little bit from what truly TI means. But I think this season, and this is what Valve is going for, and I am all for that Super Bowl feel ideal. That, hey, it's all about, if you want to truly make money, it's one, get a good contract with your team, and two, win TI or do very well at TI. And as a viewer, somebody that is excited for the health of the scene moving forward, I think that's actually the way to go.
All I know is this is, to me, a rough draft. If it isn't, that's concerning. Like, I think they're on the right track, but I'll just say a lot of less time. I think you make good points. I just, they can't ignore the concerns that have been brought up, because I think a lot of them are valid. And I think that having that Super Bowl feeling to TI is fine, but also you have to, you can't lose you can't lose your captive audience over the course of the year and just have them come back. I don't think that that's a healthy scene where most Dota people just kind of tune out and then come back and watch TI and that's it. I don't think that that's good. I guess like in every sport, like Super Bowl, there's a lot of people that never watch football throughout the course of the year and they'll have a Super Bowl party or whatever. But I don't think Dota will work the same way as that. So I don't think that that's overall a good thing. So I want there to be a ton of emphasis on TI, but I also want teams as well as people to think it matters for more than just getting to TI that you do well in these leagues. So.
Yeah, maybe that is why they also announced this, honestly, really early. I mean, here we are at the beginning of March, and they're announcing the next season, which begins when? Let me double check. October 5th. This doesn't even start until October 5th of later this year. So, to your point, that I'm sure they are taking some input, and if there's stuff that they really notice, like perhaps a relegation match idea, they're going to be like, okay, yeah, we realized we should do this now. So, yeah, definitely can develop, and we'll see. But it was obviously exciting news. We didn't necessarily expect it, at least yet, but it came out, and looking forward to down the line. That's a ways away, but hey, it'll be here before you know it, kind of deal, right? So
absolutely
cool to see it constantly developing. All right, speaking of this season, though, that we are still in, the Starladder Minor does start this Thursday, I believe I said. Yeah, so it starts on March 5th. So that would be this Thursday, and it goes through the weekend, of course. As always with the minor, the team's vying for that number one spot to not only get the most prize pool, but ultimately qualify for the ESL Los Angeles Major. 8 teams going in. It's the Starladder in Kiev, Ukraine. One kind of decent roster news update. The Fighting Pandas actually changing a bit of the roster. Eternal Envy and Snake King announcing that they're stepping down from the team. In a tweet earlier, or last week, I should say. And as a result of that, Skitter and Kazu are actually stepping in. I believe this is a temporary thing, but you got Skitter and Kazu stepping in, Bryle, Aoi, and Moon Meander, of course, making up the rest of the squad. But that was one of those, like, okay, we didn't necessarily see this coming, especially right after you qualify for the minor and potential major qualifier to come, but we haven't heard an announcement yet on where Snake King and Eternal Envy are going. They were apparently going to announce it this weekend, but Snake King then pulled back in a later tweet saying, okay, turns out we're going to announce it later on in the week. Still hasn't been announced. By the time you hear this podcast, maybe it will be, but that's the update there. But what was your take, Mr. NA Dota, on hearing about this?
Did you ever play like Super Smash Bros. Or any other game where like you jump on top of somebody and it's like called Goombaing them? Have you ever heard that? Where like you know like in the old Super Mario games, you jump on top of Goomba. And
I know what it is, but I guess I haven't necessarily heard of that phrase.
I wasn't sure if that was a phrase that like a lot of my friends used, or if that's like a commonality, like a common colloquial phrase. But I think of Envy's career as taking tier 2, tier 3 players and just Goombaing off of them, like just using them as a way to launch his own interest. That's all he sees them as, and eventually he's going to step on them and jump off. That's what he's going to do. What I mean is, as much as I honestly love what Eternal Envy brings to the scene, the 50-50s, the personality, he's truly one of a kind human being. I can't believe people still team up with this guy. I cannot believe it. Like, he just steps all over them and then ditches the second something better presents itself. Like, I mean, what happened was, the speculation is that Eternal Envy and Snake King, this is not speculation, they got followed by the owner of C9 on Twitter. So it's like the speculation, which is almost certainly true, but if it isn't, so be it, is that they're going to C9. I mean, God, man, I just can't imagine teaming up with somebody and being like, we qualify to do an event, see ya. They did get an upgrade. It is 2 European players rather than American players. The one team that actually has 5 American players on it is no longer the case. That was, I guess the realization took them this long to know if they have 5 American players, it's probably not going to work out. But all my bashing aside, I think Moon Meander can still pull it together. I think Kazu is a strong leader, so he'll bring a nice voice to the team when I know Bryle is not very vocal. I've heard interesting things about Skeeter, so in terms of like skill, but also like the way he is in a team setting. So I'm definitely fascinated to see how that plays out, personality wise. I know that Moon Meander is definitely a very strong personality. So I'm always curious when I know Skeeter is as well. Whether or not those collide or work together in a beneficial way, we'll find out at the minor. I just, once again, waiting to see which European or Chinese team wins the minor. And aside from that, that's my comments on the minor. I'm going with Alliance. I think they're the favorites in my mind to make it to the major. But I would also say that they are not out of reach of being upset. I think Alliance is one of the more predictable tier 1, tier 2 teams. I'd say they're on the more of the upper end of the tier 2 side, meaning that maybe if one of these teams manages to figure them out, they might be able to take them down. Other than that, whenever I see the minor, I talked about it last time we had our podcast right before the minor. I'm always waiting to see what, these teams that we don't hear too much about getting a chance to prove themselves, kind of expecting, like I said, the 2 or 3 best teams we think are going in to win, and always some fun Dota that isn't exactly tier 1. You get to see there were some I say sloppy. They're just not clean, but the sloppy Dota can be very entertaining, very fun to watch. So I think there's that nice what do you call it? Like entertainment value to that comes from only going to a minor. I think that's good for me on the minor. I don't want to sound like I'm not excited, but I do believe that the minors have become a David versus Goliath story.
Sure.
And it kind of makes sense why they're getting rid of them next year for me.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up if you didn't exactly. Next season, as we know in our previous discussion, they're getting rid of the minors, and I think it's for the better. Especially with what they're replacing it with. But again, for the minor that we have right here, it would be silly to not agree there that yes, Alliance I think has to hands down be the ultimate favorite team. Aster in a close second perhaps, but I'll say Gambit. Give a little bit of love to Gambit.
Striking distance.
Certainly, it wouldn't be the most ridiculous thing ever to see them win this minor and qualify for the major here. But outside of that, maybe not as much potential there. So. As far as the Fighting Panda situation, hey, I'm excited to see Keizu on a team. A good buddy of mine, and he's always a positive streamer as well to watch. So, like you said, when it comes to his leadership role, definitely. Granted, they have Aoi as well as Moomeander already, so I don't know how much necessarily that'll kick in. But I'm sure some great minds will come together there and think of some good drafts and everything. So it'll be fun to watch them and see how they perform. At the Starladder Minor, but I guess so with Eternal Envy and Snaking, that's definitely one of the more exciting things to see where that leads. And I was gonna say, BSJ, there's rumors of the potential roster, and I know your name was even thrown out there a little bit, but after hearing you there, I guess
sadly it's always just memes. I kind of enjoy it that somehow it gets thrown into the mix no matter what, and some of the players just really embrace it. Part of me also wonders, I feel like I have a lot of knowledge about Dota, and, I did grind my way back to a pretty high rank. So kind of like, to me, it's kind of funny that I get memed on still about that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I kind of enjoy it. So I'm like, I don't really understand why it still happens fully, but kind of like when I got the Chylon Qual situation, I'm like, I don't really know how I got all this attention that was kind of started as negative and turned into positive. I don't calculate these things or try to make them happen. They kind of just do. So I've just learned to go with it. And I can tell you that there was absolutely 0% chance they ever added me to that team.
All right.
That's what I got for you.
We'll see the announcement later this week and BSJ on the roster and be like, you got us, man. Good job.
Dude, that would have been the most convincing sell if I was just BSing you the whole
debate,
time. So,
the hard
I would
debate.
pat myself on the back if I was just BSing you right now, because I'd be if I could BS that well, I feel like I could go places. I could go far.
You could go far in life, certainly, if you're that good at it. So, all right. Well, again, not much else to say about the minor. Again, it starts on Thursday, so it goes through the weekend, and then ultimately qualifying for that major spot, that 16th major spot that is on the line. And then whichever team qualifies, of course, has to make plans to get to NA quickly. And again, I go back to, from the logistics standpoint, Team Aster specifically, a team that definitely has a shot of winning it. From the China region, that is going to be interesting to see if they qualify, and with everything that's going on right now, how that may impact some things. But okay, not much else was planned to talk about on the show. I will say, yeah. Well, okay. Let's see if you were going to say it. So what do you got?
Oh, I think you might be on the same thing. There's just one super frickety fresh update today for the casual player or every Dota player. There's the ranked roles update.
Oh, okay.
If you didn't see that come out, maybe you're on a different page than me. But just wanted to touch base on the fact that they removed core and support MMR now. I feel like it was kind of an archaic concept. It's kind of like when they added shrines. Now all the things they've changed about how matchmaking works. It just kind of became something that was unnecessary and didn't really serve the function that it was trying to do in the first place. So what they basically did was they have one MMR and they are calculating how much of each role you play. And if you find a game for a different role, then you find yourself put in a lower MMR match, but also it has less impact on your MMR if you win or lose. Is what I'm kind of
so there's still ranked roles, right?
Yeah, so I'm under the impression it is still ranked roles, but if you if they took your last 100 games and say I've played offlane 90 of my games, it'll take into account that if I'm playing safe lane or hard support, that is not they're trying to make the MMR value one value that overall reflects your skill in Dota, and they're trying. I know that's what they've been trying to accomplish. And, this seems like another stab in the dark. It kind of makes sense what they're doing, trying to make that happen the way they are. But will it work? Not sure. People seem to be having to recalibrate. So obviously everyone gets mad about that or whatever. But I think overall, the fact that they're clearly giving effort to something like this tells me that they care about the longevity of the game. So that also applies to, what I talked about for next season. And I hope to continue to see this type of effort from them. They're clearly, observant of what's going on and trying to, I like the reverse engineering aspect, what's wrong, what can we take away to remove that, and what can we add back to improve upon it. And as long as they're doing that with that and they take the same approach to the leagues next year, where this year they have been kind of doing the whole trial and error of the rule set for matchmaking. As long as they do that for next year with the regional leagues, I'm good. And I think this bodes well that they keep trying to do this. And I always welcome new updates as long as they don't make it so I can't find a game. That sometimes is the factor. But yeah. I think somebody in chat makes a little smiley face saying my skill for between each role is vastly different.
Yeah.
That's
going to be interesting. Point. Yeah.
I think it's really annoying to know that you have a guy that on your team, for instance, that is way higher rank and on a certain role, and he's not getting to play that. I think that does take away from the quality of the games. Not everybody is super versatile, and that's kind of okay, but the fact is they do detract from the game naturally if they're not able to find their role or whatever, or what if they're trying to practice a different role? Do they have to get a Smurf? What are the options there? Are you telling me that if I'm an AK mid laner, I'm supposed to be an AK off laner? It's like, no, you're not supposed to be able to do that. So the fact that core and support were the kind of the two divisions, I think this is even more accurate. I at some point I said that I thought they might need a unique role MMR, but also someone's not supposed to have 5 MMRs. That's
just too much.
That's what I meant. I'm like, I know that's not reasonable, but I think they should try to cater in some way to reflect the fact that we are all differently skilled in different roles. So I think I think this is an attempt, and I like that they recognize that. And this week has been interesting to me just because there's so much on this, but there's been no Dota. So in terms of just updates for the next competitive season, as well as the ranked season for all the players. It's a big week for absolutely nothing to happen.
Yeah. That's true. In my almost, it's going 3.5, almost 4 years really of being not gonna say full-time Dota 2, but really much more invested in Dota 2 than I was previous to that. I'll say Valve, there's one thing that I know about Valve and what they're gonna bring to the table is they are gonna bring updates. They are constantly looking to develop and looking to make updates. There are frustrating times, and there's definitely some patches where you're like, what the hell are you thinking? But they do constantly evolve. So I'm not surprised to see yet again another change here to try to help out when it comes to matchmaking. But then to go a little bit further on that point, I'll say, you have your very unique perspective being one of the more top ranked players, especially in the NA region. And obviously a lot of the vocal people out there and streamers and stuff tend to be more of the top ranked players. Man, as a player that's not even 3,000 MMR in most cases, whenever they make a change like this, I kind of just go with the flow and I hit Q and then I'm in a game and I just play. Like I personally, from my aspect, from my perspective, it doesn't feel like a lot's changing ever when they make these changes to matchmaking most of the time. I mean, obviously the introduction of like a role matchmaking certainly had impact, and that makes it a little more interesting. But I personally never really find it too, I don't want to say not too needed, but it's not too impactful for at least a player from my perspective. But again, I do understand, especially somebody that has to, wait 20 plus minutes for queues sometimes when some of these patches happened. I certainly could see why you're more invested into what these changes are and what's happening.
Yeah, I would just say it primarily affects anybody who plays Dota a lot and also cares That's fair. Lot about their rank. Whether no matter what rank you are, I think if you care a lot, then these type of changes are important. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people just want a system that accurately reflects how good or bad they are at Dota. And that's what matters to me about this. Obviously, the queue time is important at the highest level. That's really where that matters. But at the same time, I think the biggest frustration is they had to remove role queues for the highest level.
Yeah.
Because there just weren't enough people, and it was resulting in really imbalanced games or really long queue times. But at the same time, I don't think you can just say, hey, let's go back to the old system. Like that there's a reason why they made a new one. So moving forward for the highest level, which also affects people watching, if you're watching streamers, at least you want the game to be as high a quality as possible.
That I agree, yeah.
I would say that what I'm hoping for is that, say I'm 8,000 and I'm an offlane player, that if I'm not allowed to rank role queue, which is fine, and you put me in a game, like I'd rather you assign me a role, and if I'm forced to play hard support, that it calculates me as a 7.2K, or whatever. That it calculates me in a way that it inserts into a game balanced on the fact that it thinks I'm bad at support or whatever. I'm just giving an example. But what I'm basically trying to say is, I hope to some extent that the system is almost taking these really high-ranked players and giving them effectively 5 MMRs as they're going into the game, meaning that we see 1, right? We see our number that represents our skill level. But when the game is finding something for me, it's telling me you're going to play hard support this game, that game is found off the average that I am not as good as I am at offlane.
Like
That's what I'm hoping for. I think that'll be better reflected games. I think a lot of streamers complain about, say someone like CCNC gets a guy on his team that's ranked 50, but he only plays mid. He literally only plays mid, and if CCNC takes mid from him, the guy might as well be 6K. So it's like there has to be some sort of way to alleviate that. So I hope that's what they end up doing. So we'll see.
So what I was going to bring up, so it's kind of funny you actually had something else there, but I guess so one last topic before really wrapping up, and not a long one here necessarily, but BTS, Beyond the Summit, Dota Summit 12 was just officially announced earlier today. Loot.bet Dota Summit 12 is what it's officially being called. And get this, it's actually March 10th through the 13th. So it's going to start on Tuesday of next week, and it's finishing on the Friday of that week. So the finals will actually be on a Friday. So it's not even going to go into the weekend, which is already kind of a unique concept in itself. But you figure, why they're doing this is you got the teams that are traveling to LA, likely will be in LA already at that point, boot camping, getting ready for the major, and I'm sure that's part of it. According to the video that they launched, there's going to be 6 teams. They didn't announce any teams yet, so we'll see. You assume that it's going to be 6 teams from the major because of how this is shaping up, but that's exciting. So by the time our next podcast comes around next week, we'll have that to preview with more information.
For sure. No, that sounds like it's a good idea. Why not? All the good teams that normally wouldn't want to travel to LA just to go to a summit are going to be there. So why not? It's a smart play by them.
Yeah, very smart. Taking advantage of that. Good for them. And everyone knows they always run great events, not only for the spectators, but for the players especially. They certainly enjoy playing at those. So, hey, get some good practice. And we'll see if we have a VP situation where one of the teams just like randoms every hero and sees how far they get in that case, winning the whole thing. But preparing for the major, you would hope that the teams will take it a little more seriously. But, again, it's cool that we have that content coming at least. All right. I think that's pretty much it, though, unless you got anything else you want to talk about, BSJ?
No, that's good for me this week.
All right.
Next week, I guess we'll have to figure out what exactly is going on, because I think we'll be right in the middle of the summit if that's based on the dates, right?
Well, so it starts the 10th. So
it starts the 10th, so we'll be previewing. Okay.
Exactly. The day before it starts, it'll be perfect, actually.
Sweet. So we'll get to see the minor results, and then we'll get to preview going into the next step. Cool. That's actually a nice little date for how that works out. So I look forward to talking about next week, and I also look forward to giving a brief update then about my experience with this new MMR system. So that's going to be what my next week encompasses, and I'm sure a lot of the people who are listening to this, whether or not it's today or sometime between now and the next podcast, I'm sure a lot can possibly change in a short time about that kind of thing. So look forward to that developing from my streamer side. And it's going to be a fun week of Dota, at least fresh, even if it's miserable.
It'll be somewhat good. It's not going to be all miserable. It's going to be some good matches.
Keep it interesting. Let's leave it at that.
We'll see what Starladder brings to the table with production as well. I'm sure they'll be solid. So yeah, should be a fun week of Dota into next week. We'll see you guys next week. Once again, BSJ joining myself, BreakyCPK. Thanks again to Tsunami for last week for helping us out, as well as the host there stepping in my shoes. So see you guys next week. Have a good night. We'll see you then.